Kansan since birth. Born and raised in Topeka, Kansas, graduated from Seaman High School in 2002, attended Kansas State University for a couple of semesters. Don't have a degree, wasn't ready for college at the time, but ended up coming to Junction City to work for the Junction City Police Department in 2008, and have been here ever since. So the inspiration, I think, came from a multitude of factors that just kind of culminated at a head around 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, I've been out of law enforcement at that point for about 6-7 years. But I was starting to see a turn, not in a great way, primarily from the police department. There was some bad leadership there. You can ask anybody there, it's just how it was. And I started paying attention to the commission meetings a little bit, not as much as I should, I know, terrible citizen, let me tell you. But started paying attention to it, and I had, memories back to 2008 when, and I don't remember what the name of the city manager was at the time, but when he left, new city manager came in around 08, 09, found out that we didn't even have enough money for payroll, we didn't think. So it was all hands on deck, and what are we gonna do about this in the city commission? And come to find out that we were gonna have to furlough the city. I think they wanted to do like a full month of furloughs for every city employee. But I do remember that it got knocked down to something like 2 weeks that we were able to space out over 3 months. But nonetheless, the time that we had no pay, well, it was terrible, it stunk. Water bills went up since then. And a lot of that came from the city manager acting in what he thought was the best interest of everyone, but it was all about what he thought was best. It was his ideals, it was what he believed. I don't really know his justification for that, but it got me thinking that that idea of just, I think this is the best way because I think this is the best way, is a rather dangerous precept to have. Or fast forward from 2 years to about a year ago, I'm starting to watch more commission meetings, and I am seeing commissioners, again, kind of having that ideal of, well, I believe it should be this way. I believe it should be this way. And I don't ascribe to that. And I thought to myself, again, about a year ago, maybe I should look into it, right? And then the, I guess you could call it scandal, not the current mayor, but the one right beforehand, some of his integrity issues got brought into question, or there were issues that brought his integrity into question. He resigned, and that opened a commission slot. And I figured, well, why not? I'll put my name in, so I did. I put my name into City Commission. Obviously, Commissioner Gutierrez received the slot, which, great. I think he's been doing a great job. But then the seats opened up, and I figured if I was willing to try with the resume, why don't I try with an election? And not under this, but a pretense, say, of I want to do this, I can change that. But more along the guise of, I want to be impartial. I want to understand what the policies are. I want to understand what the responsibilities are of this city commission, and then make decisions or votes based on not what I personally believe, but what constituents, members of the city, members of the community, and literally what is best for the city has to say on the matter. So the first one is going to be a little bit out of left field, I think, by comparison to my other 9 opponents, co-running members of this election, and that's going to be pay. And a lot of folks will say, all the city pay, what budget do we have? And I think that's looking at this very much so incorrectly. You can go ahead and look, and I just as recently as about a week ago went and looked at law enforcement officers in Riley County, law enforcement officers in Salina. You're looking at no less than a $2 to $5 discrepancy in terms of pay. You talk about dispatchers, it's even greater. You talk about clerks, it's even greater. Waste management, about the same, $5, $3 around in there. And I know people will say, well, Manhattan's bigger, well, Salina's bigger. Not by much, not in my opinion. And again, these are kind of the outcrop cities of the major cities of Kansas. You have your Topeka, your Wichita, Lawrence, maybe a little bit. Again, Manhattan, maybe a little bit, but then your Kansas City areas, and the Kansas City areas, of course, have increased pay. But for some reason, we're well under what I would believe to be, there it is, I believe to be, but I base that off of what I've already researched about the surrounding areas, fair compensation. Now that seems kind of odd. Why would I go that route? And the best analogy that I can give to you is if I had to tell you, by customer service and by customer service alone, you had to pick to go to McDonald's or Chick-fil-A for the rest of your life, I'd wager 99% of people are going to go to Chick-fil-A. It has nothing to do with the food. It has absolutely everything to do with the personalities and how people treat you while you are there. And the reason they do that is primarily because increased pay, better benefits, and more to the point, if you want to run a Chick-fil-A, to my understanding, I don't have all the details on this, but to my understanding, you have to start off as a crew member, meaning they have a vested interest in the restaurant that they're working, and when somebody has a vested interest in where they're working, they become a better employee. And I think that if we hired the top, and we paid them the top, and we trained them to the top, that when Manhattan, a Salina, a Lawrence, a Topeka, a Wichita, for law enforcement officers, clerks, executive staff, IT, anything comes and says, hey, we have another position for you. No, I think I'll stay here. They've treated me the absolute best and I want to give it back to them. So that's my first issue. On top of that, though, the second issue comes down to budget. And I'm still doing a bit more research on this in terms of policy and procedure, but one of the things that a number of candidates have actually mentioned is kind of this loose or laissez-faire methodology of doling out or giving out charity donations. I think charity is a great thing. I give to charities myself. But again, I give to charities with my money. I don't give to charities with other people's money. And from what I've seen, it's basically a come as you are, make a request, articulate your point, and then the 5 persons determine whether or not there's merit. I'd like to see a bit more structure to that. I think that will also increase transparency and also kind of give a uniformity to the distribution of those funds, eliminating any perceived bias. And then the last one that I know a lot of folks have talked about, I think a little bit different on it, I think, is the roads. Now, a lot of folks just say, I want the roads fixed. So coming from a project management background, that's obviously, to me, oversimplistic. I'm looking for something, again, that's transparent. I'm looking for something that if I live on insert road here, where I've got 4 blocks of absolutely torn up asphalt, and I come to the city commission and they just say, we're working on it, I'm gonna believe them, because I don't believe the city commission is just gonna lie to me out of, convenience or spite. The problem is I don't know where that's happening, and that's what I mean when I say the roads. I'm looking for something or a way that we can say, look, here are the roads in Junction City. These are the worst. These are the medium. They just need maintenance. And kind of a schedule or a transparent way, so that way the populace can see, no, my road is not going to be worked on, not at least for 6 months, and can then track if they want to, via website, via commission meeting. We're on schedule, we're not on schedule. And so somebody who does have a torn up road would then know, as opposed to, well, hopefully they'll get to it one day. I'd rather have, yeah, it's going to be 18 months from now, but at least I'm on the schedule. My vision for Junction City for 5 to 10 years is someone else is going to have that vision. As I understand it, a city commissioner will have anywhere between 2 and 4 years of a term. I don't know if I would run again after 4 years, because the problems that I see, and again, going back to the first one, one of the reasons I am running is because from the perspective of where I see the city benefiting the most is from a foundational or infrastructure location. I don't know anything about bringing everybody in, bringing another business in. I don't know anything about taxes and tax breaks and all that. Like, willing to learn, of course. But what I do know about is infrastructure, foundation, planning to have a solid base so you can build on top. So 5 to 10 years from now, my hope is that the commission, in the time that I'm on it, if I get elected, of course, is our foundation that we provide the city is so stout and so sturdy that we can do whatever the will of the people is, hopefully at a much lower cost based on where our bills are, the water bill, etc., as it is now. And this again goes back to foundation. So Grant Avenue has been torn up pretty bad. They have a project that they're doing on that is being executed on that. I think that's great. But one, we have our perception, which everybody knows. You've heard, I'm sure, multiple commissioners mention it. We're also always known as Junktown. I think the downtown area kind of revitalization is a really good way to go, or a really positive way to move us towards getting rid of that stigma, so to speak. But honestly, I think that is one of the biggest things is that stigma. The way I would plan to address it again comes down to, again, foundations. As I understand it, and I can't speak to the authenticity, and this may just be talk around the water cooler, taxes are going up in Manhattan or Riley County. Cost of living is going up in Riley County, and we still have a marginally low or lower cost of living here, depending, of course, on the Fort Riley, what's that called, basic housing allowance, as I understand it. Sometimes there's rumor, there's never anything confirmed, of course, that perhaps rates vary based off that amount. I think establishing ourselves in the community, and I mean here, Fort Riley, Manhattan, as a safe haven, someplace that is not junk town, someplace that I know Junction City to be, which is a great place to live and a great place to quote unquote invest, at least my time. I don't have any investment properties or anything like that, but I live here. I have invested myself within the community. Getting that message out there is probably one of the biggest tasks or the hardest tasks we have. And the only way I know to do that is to, again, establish a foundation that keeps us rock solid. And the only way that I can really speak to this is hypothetically, because I don't know all the ins and outs of everything that can and can't go on as a commissioner. However, as I understand it, the commissioner is always given a city email address. I can let you know that will be an open policy for me. Send me an email. I'll get back to it as soon as humanly possible. But also, I believe I spoke on this in either it was the GOP or perhaps it was out at Grant Avenue meet, that during a commission meeting, I know towards the end they have commissioner comments. Prior to that, they have the audience come up and give comment about anything they want. One of my beliefs is that anything that gets addressed or brought up, if there is an ask, if there is a question, somebody should own it, whatever that ask or question is. And if it is asked of us and we decide, hey, we're not going to answer that question, that could be stated. However, my promise would be that if 4 other people don't want to take it upon themselves, I'm going to try to. I'll write your question down, and then to the best of my ability, I'll give you an estimate as when I will have an answer for you, based on the commission meetings, if you want it public, or say, hey, I'll get in contact with you by X period of time if you don't care and would like me to give you a call. The issue of transparency not only comes in me saying things, but also me being held accountable for those things. So in the event that I were to say I'll have an answer for you within the next 2 commission meetings, and 2 commission meetings come and go, it doesn't matter if the person who asked that question is in the audience or not. In my opinion, anybody who is in the audience at that point has the right to say, 3 commission meetings ago or 2 commission meetings ago, you said you would answer this question. Do you have an answer? And if I don't, I need to have an explanation as to why I don't. That needs to be held to me as much as humanly possible. And I think just by embodying that type of transparency or that level of accountability, I think it will then extend, if others aren't doing it already, that they would say, yeah, this is a good idea, and adopt that ideal. What I love about Junction City is just the sheer community that we have by comparison. So you and I spoke prior to this interview briefly. I mentioned that I work remote. I used to travel far more than I do now. I rarely travel, but when I did, I would travel everywhere. East Coast, West Coast, down south, up north, internationally even. And one of the things that I just love about this community is I cannot think of a reason to live anywhere else. I get challenged all the time. Well, you could live anywhere. Why do you still live in the Midwest? Why wouldn't I live here? The cost of living is great. The people are great. I have great neighbors, but at the same time, my neighbors, they leave me alone. It's quiet. When you're talking type 1 crime, non-eventful when you're talking about Junction City. When you're talking about calamities and major disasters, I understand that, back in 2008, we had the tornado that hit Enterprise. But outside of the Tornado Alley aspect of it, this has to be one of the safest places I've ever lived. This is really the only other place that I have lived, and I've lived in Manhattan, that I think to myself, I don't have to worry about what goes on. Again, I don't know if this is the best question to ask me, the growth and development aspect. I don't know how much into a growth and development cycle that the city is in. Based off, like I said, some past bad leadership, at least at the police department. We're still coming out of bad leadership decisions from back in 2008. Don't know if you know, but that debt is still being paid off. We are just getting ready to turn the corner, I think, in terms of growth and development. Like I said, I want to make sure that we stay on that course of building that foundation. I recently had a couple, I believe it was firefighters, stop and ask, and they said, hey, let's say for the sake of argument, there was a $5 million increase based on all of the debt from 2008. What would you say should happen to those mills when the debt is paid off? Now, to me, and again, I know not the greatest about economic development or anything like that, but if the 5 mills went towards the paying off of the debt and the debt is gone, I don't see a reason, unless I could be very well convinced of it, those 5 mills should stay. It doesn't make any sense to me. The debt is gone. Why are people paying the same amount of money? There's less expense to the city. That means there's less expense to the taxpayer. So my growth and development ideas aren't really radical, I don't think. Where we are is where we are. If we're in the black at the end of the year, we don't have an extreme surplus, and we're definitely not in a deficit, there's no reason I see to incur additional cost by the taxpayers. By extension, if that is incorrect and we do have a deficit, then the economic growth and development may have to be put on pause in terms of getting the nice toys, so to speak, in getting the books back in the black. So in reading your questions, this was probably my least favorite, because I feel like no matter what I say is going to come off as an attack towards anybody else, and I don't want that to happen. Number one, anybody who is older than me has far more aged wisdom than I do, life experience, and I'm not going to discredit that, and I'm not going to discount that. I will say that I'm 41 years of age. I haven't lived I've lived a full life, but not the fullest life, so I know I have a lot to learn. I would like to say I'm seasoned, but I'm not so egotistical that I think I know everything. Not saying that anybody else does think that way, but just want to get that out there. I think the primary draw kind of comes back to the 3 roles that I've had within the company that I work for. When I first started with my company, I was a sales engineer or a system engineer. If you don't know what that means, is there's a sales guy. His job is to wine and dine the client and tell them that the product can do literally everything and then some. The sales engineer, system engineers, kind of there to kind of bring them back to reality, but then also talk logistics. So kind of brief them on what we have available. So in the instance of the city commission, somebody comes up and say, I want this to happen. Yeah, there could be somebody within the city, and I'm not saying that this would happen, but just for the sake of argument, a city manager, a police chief, a fire chief, I'm just speaking to the heads of all the departments here. They say, yes, that could absolutely happen. Go talk to the city commission about it. From the system engineering perspective, okay, let's rein that in. Let's talk about what assets we actually have, and let's try and solve your problem. From there, I went into deployment, which is a deployment engineer, which is I have the assets, now I have to make the assets work. I have to install the product. I have to make sure that all of the boxes are checked not only to the point of we get to, as a company, recognize revenue, but from the perspective of the customer needs to be happy. Sometimes those boxes don't marry up exactly perfectly, and so you have to find ways to say, okay, how can I perhaps customize this for this way? How can I make sure that it is reported back correctly yet accurately, that they got everything they wanted, while at the same time maybe giving them a touch more personal, a more personal touch, just to make sure that the customer was happy, kind of balancing that ebb and flow. But then lastly, and I know I'm not the only one that has this experience, is with project management. And in project management, it really is more of a binary experience than anything I've dealt with. And I've dealt with coding before, which is extremely binary. When given a task, not only are you supposed to solve the task in terms of that yes/no binary switch, but you have to foresee all possible outcomes, all possible landmines, and treat those as yes, they will happen, no, they won't happen. And as soon as you flick the switch into yes, it will happen, great, now we have to go down the avenue of what happens if this occurs. My mind is tuned to this way of thinking. I know that at least one, if not two others on the commission or candidates think in this way as well as I do. But I'd like to think that my law enforcement experience, my experience as an engineer, and then my experience as a project manager uniquely qualify me for the position.